Hello and a very warm welcome to you. I'm Adam Smith, the Meridian Group Commercial Director, and welcome to the latest in our podcast series with our partners Ryan concerning the top 10 signs that your SAP system cannot manage EU VAT complexity. Today we'll discuss one of the tactics that businesses are often using within their SAP system, and that's developing bespoke access sequences together with a complex set of condition records in order to try and derive a complex VAT decision in SAP. Now, this may well enable them to determine the VAT treatment for some types of complex transactions. However, there are many drawbacks in following this approach. So to explore these and discuss these today, we have two experts in this area, namely our own Nazar Zaidi, who's one of our senior VAT consultants here at Meridian, and Gilbert Mwansa, who's the Director of Tax Technology at our partners Ryan. So, Nazar, over to you.
Thank you, Adam. Gilbert, what we'd be quite interested to learn about today is if you can outline some of the challenges that you see some of your SAP customers facing when it comes to determining complex EU transactions within the system. What are the types of challenges that you would see within SAP, and how do you see your customers going about to solve these challenges?
Well, thank you, Nazar. That's a great question. I'll just start by saying that while the tax regulations world over are in a constant change mode, SAP's native VAT determination functionality has remained largely unchanged from version to version. SAP VAT determination functionality uses condition records which are linear, as they are based on a limited number of parameters provided by SAP in their standard field catalog. In other words, SAP's tax condition technique lacks the dynamism that most of the EU complex VAT determination scenarios demand. The VAT determination logic is solely dependent on the two-character tax code, which means you have a limited number of combinations available. The tax code itself has a one-to-one relationship with the tax rate and the general ledger account and does not contain any date stamps. So if you do require if the tax rates changes, you need to create new tax codes in the system. In addition, SAP does not have a standard functionality to provide invoice legal text to support specific VAT treatments that have been applied in the system. So I guess, this is just a flavor of some of the, challenges that we see, but there are many.
Great, thank you, Gilbert. So one thing that we see a lot of businesses do over time is that they manage the standard SAP limitations by creating additional access sequences and condition records. So you touched on the standard fields available within the SAP functionality, which is out of the box. So that would include things like tax departure country, tax destination country, customer tax classification, and material tax classification. And those are the core tax determination characteristics that are made up of the basic access sequence and condition records. So what we do see clients do, particularly in the short term, is they will create their own bespoke access sequences, and they will start adding additional characteristics. Now, that often works in the short term, and it's perfectly understandable why clients would do that. But in the long term, it can create a very highly complex and customized VAT determination logic within the system. And over time, it becomes very difficult for tax, finance, and IT to really understand, trust, or maintain what's actually in the system. So as a general rule, we tend to say that if your business has more than 5 access sequences or it has over 100 condition records per VAT jurisdiction, that's normally a good indication that your system is getting too complex and you're managing complex VAT treatment through the access sequence or condition record technique, which creates long-term maintenance issues. So perhaps, Gilbert, you could give us a bit of an overview of how you see clients in terms of managing this kind of challenge via access sequences and condition records. What are some of the case studies that you've perhaps seen?
Yeah. I think just to use spot on in terms of your observations and just general approach. I think also from my experience, solutions range from highly customized VAT determination to what I can classify as semi-automated processes. So some of the clients we come across deploy very costly customization to manage the complexities that are demanded by the European VAT regulations. Other clients implement what I would classify as a hybrid model. As you said, they create extensive condition records. They add a number of parameters. But what we've noticed is that even with extensive condition records and access sequences, it doesn't necessarily drive the automation that they require. What we often see is that they still have a manual intervention process where users need to select information such as the tax classification indicator, an alternative tax classification indicator that is, Incoterms, etc., to be able to drive a specific tax code within the condition records.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I think you're absolutely right to highlight that sort of distinction between automated and manual VAT determination. So absolutely, the more characteristics you have within your access sequence and condition record, the more you have to teach the system what those characteristics are. And of course, if you can't do that in an automated way, you're effectively creating even more manual workaround. Certainly, what we would always say as a business who wants to look at this, try and understand how fit for modern VAT challenges your system is, the first step would be to actually look to see within your system, if you're a tax manager, how many condition records and how many access sequences do you have? But in high level terms, what you'd need to do is go into transaction VK13, and that will initially tell you how many access sequences your system has set up. Then the next step would be to use transaction V/LD to actually print out your condition records. And really, that is going to be a very good litmus test of how fit for purpose your system is. If you have hundreds and thousands of condition records, and if while reviewing them they don't make too much sense, then normally that's a good barometer of perhaps a system that needs to be looked at. On the other hand, if you can review them and they all make sense to you, then you're probably in a much better place. It means that you'll have it much easier when, for example, you're explaining to tax authorities how your system is set up for VAT purposes.
That's great, Nazar. So I just want to find out from you, can you just outline how Meridian VAT add-on technology can automate the treatment of complex VAT decisions?
Sure. So one of the key things that we try and do is actually keep the access sequence approach as simple as possible. So whilst we see that many businesses do create additional characteristics, we try and take the opposite approach. We try and stick with what standard SAP has provided in the basic access sequences. And then what we have is in the background, we have a lot of detailed logic and certain Meridian VAT add-on tables that will allow us to correctly determine those characteristics. So as an example, standard SAP can be very bad at determining the tax departure country in chain transactions. Many of our clients would previously create new characteristics within the access sequence, let's say delivering plant or customer number, and try and get the correct VAT treatment from that perspective. What we do instead is actually try and get the tax departure country correctly reported in the first place. So we have certain tables which can dynamically update per sales order the correct VAT treatment depending on the VAT rules. And because we take that technique, we actually are able to ensure that our clients never have to create new access sequences and they don't have to create complex condition records. So that's the first sort of general approach that we take. Another important factor to bear in mind is that when it comes to cross-border condition records, we actually have a technique whereby we use country code EU and country code XX for non-EU jurisdictions. And because of that, we are able to remove a huge amount of duplicate condition records. So typically, post implementation of the Meridian VAT add-on, clients will often find that they go from having thousands, sometimes more, sometimes tens of thousands of condition records, to having condition records very much in the tens or hundreds, very low hundreds, following a Meridian implementation. And because of the techniques that we use and the general approach of the VAT add-on, what we tend to find is that the complexity that comes with EU VAT determination is actually handled in the background by the Meridian VAT add-on. And the condition records and access sequences that tax, finance, and IT see are actually a lot simpler. So it's one of the biggest changes that clients will see when they implement our solution. They're going from a very complex setup of access sequences and condition records to a very simple setup, because, like I say, the complexity of EU VAT determination is actually handled by the VAT add-on in the background.
Excellent stuff. Now, thank you, Nazar and Gilbert, for your time and insight into how businesses are using access sequences and condition records in SAP, and discussing how Meridian can help organisations solve this important issue. We hope those listening found this discussion informative and helpful, and we look forward to talking to you again in the next podcast edition of the top 10 signs that your SAP system can't manage EU VAT complexity.